Have you ever trusted a map so much that you stopped looking at the ground beneath your feet? What if the path you were certain you walked was actually a shadow cast by something much larger, something hidden in the blood of your ancestors? Before we walk this path together, I need you to do something small but vital for this journey. Hit the like button right now to signal that you value truth over comfort. Subscribe so you don't lose this story in the algorithm, and share this with someone who needs to know that history is alive. For a long time, the story of the Navajo people seemed settled. It was a story printed in hardcover books with glossy photos and authoritative fonts. It was a story taught in universities across the country. It was a story that felt safe because it made sense. The narrative was linear. It had a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. We thought we knew where they came from. We thought we knew how they arrived. We thought we knew who they were. But stories told by humans are often just sketches of a much deeper reality. They are outlines drawn in pencil when the truth is painted in oil. And sometimes the paint peels back to reveal a canvas we never expected to see. The Navajo Nation is vast. If you stand on the edge of their lands in the American Southwest, the horizon stretches out further than the eye can comfortably hold. It is a place of red rock and deep canyons, of silence that speaks louder than words. The people who call this place home are the largest federally recognized tribe in the United States. There are nearly 400,000 of them. Their presence is a cornerstone of the region. Their culture is vibrant, resilient, and deeply connected to the earth. For generations, historians and anthropologists looked at this people and drew a line on the map. They said this line started in the far north. They said it began in the cold forests of Western Canada and the subarctic regions. They said that sometime between the years 1300 and 1500, these ancestors began a long walk south. They moved through the Great Plains. They navigated the harsh terrains. Eventually, they settled in the Four Corners region. This migration theory was not just a guess. It was built on solid ground. It was built on language. Language is often the best map we have for human movement. Words carry history in their sounds. The Navajo language is called Diné Bizad. It is complex. It is tonal. It is beautiful. But to the linguists of the past, it was also a clue. It belonged to a family called Athabaskan. This family of languages is spoken far away in Alaska and northern Canada. The connection seemed obvious. If the language comes from the north, the people must have come from the north. It was a logical deduction. It fit the puzzle pieces together neatly. The Apache people are relatives in this linguistic family. Their histories overlap. The story held together. It was the kind of answer that stops questions. When you have an answer that fits, you stop looking for new questions. You close the book, you put it on the shelf, and for decades, the book stayed closed. But there is a difference between a story that fits and a story that is true. There is a friction that happens when reality rubs against theory. It is a small sound at first. It is easy to ignore. It is the sound of something that does not quite align. For the Navajo, this friction existed in their cultural history. When the ancestors arrived in the Southwest, they did not just settle, they changed, they transformed. This transformation happened with a speed that surprised historians. They came into contact with the Pueblo peoples. They came into contact with Spanish colonizers. And in a relatively short time, the Navajo way of life shifted. They adopted the sheep, they adopted the horse. These animals became central to their economy. They became central to their identity. They learned to work silver. They became famous for their jewelry. They learned to weave on looms. Their blankets became renowned across the world. They absorbed ceremonies. They absorbed spiritual ideas. They took pieces of the world around them and made them their own. Historians call this cultural diffusion. It is a polite term. It means borrowing. It means adaptation. Every culture borrows from its neighbors. That is how humanity grows. But the depth of this integration was unusual. It was not just surface level. It was deep. It was internal. The Navajo did not just use the horse. They became horse people. They did not just weave blankets. They created an art form that defined them. They synthesized these new elements into a coherent whole. They became something new. This synthesis was powerful. It was successful. But it also raised a quiet question. Was this just cultural borrowing? Or was it something more? Was it possible that the people themselves were more complex than the language suggested? Culture can be learned, but blood carries a different kind of memory. Culture can change in a generation. Genetics take millennia to shift. For a long time, we could not read the genetic memory, and we only had the cultural artifacts. We only had the words. But then, the technology arrived. In the late 20th century, science found a way to look into the past without digging up pots or arrows. They found a way to read the code of life itself. DNA became the new archive. It was more reliable than oral history. It was more precise than linguistic theory. Or so we thought. The first wave of genetic studies began in the 1990s. Scientists looked at mitochondrial DNA. This is a specific type of genetic material. It is passed down only from the mother. It travels through the female line unchanged except for slow mutations. It is a perfect record of maternal ancestry. The results seem to confirm the old story. The Navajo showed genetic signatures common to indigenous populations across the Americas. These signatures pointed back to Asia. They pointed to Beringia. This was the ancient land bridge that once connected Siberia and Alaska. It was the gateway to the Americas. The data looked clean. It looked expected. The maternal line said, "We are who we thought we were." But science is rarely satisfied with a single line of evidence. Researchers wanted to know more. They wanted to look at the other side of the family. They turned their attention to the Y-chromosome. This is the genetic signature passed only from the father. It travels through the male line. If the mitochondrial DNA was the mother's story, the Y-chromosome was the father's story. And when the results came back, they did not match. This is where the tension begins. This is where the map starts to tear. The maternal line showed continuity. It showed indigenous ancestry consistent with the migration from the north. It was clean. It was expected. But the paternal line was messy. It was complicated. The Y chromosome data contained markers that did not align neatly with other Athabaskan populations. There were signatures there that should not have been there. There were genetic echoes of events that had not been accounted for. When two genetic streams point in different directions, it is not just an anomaly, it is a signal. It is a message from the past trying to break through the noise. The scientists had to explain this asymmetry. Why did the mothers tell one story and the fathers tell another? There were theories. The first theory was about admixture. This means mixing. The idea was that as the ancestral Navajo moved south, they met other people. They interbred with populations that were already there. These people had different genetic profiles. The men from these groups joined the Navajo community. They married into the tribes. Their genetic markers entered the Y chromosome line. The women of the Navajo lineage remained more continuous. This would explain the difference. The genetics were not contradictory. They reflected two different histories. One history for the men, one history for the women. This made sense logically. It fit the model of migration and contact. But there was a second theory. This one was more speculative. It was more unsettling. A small number of researchers suggested something radical. They proposed that the Navajo carried traces of contact with populations that arrived via routes we do not recognize. They spoke of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. They spoke of the Pacific. They spoke of the deep Atlantic. These are ideas that mainstream archaeology has resisted for a long time. They are controversial. But genetic data occasionally forces them back onto the table. If the markers did not fit the known Native American profiles, where did they come from? Were there visitors before Columbus? Were there waves of migration that left no trace in the artifacts but left a mark in the blood? This theory opened a door that many wanted to keep closed. It suggested that the history of the Americas was more connected to the rest of the world than we admitted. Then there was a third framework. This one focused on internal transformation. It suggested that the ancestors of the Navajo were not a single coherent group. The southward migration might not have been one movement. It might have been a patchwork. Different groups might have moved at different times. They might have absorbed and been absorbed. The founding population might have been multi-ethnic from the start. The Athabaskan label might be too simple. It might be a linguistic convenience that hides a genetic reality. Each of these frameworks contained something true. None of them fully resolved the data. The mystery remained. The friction persisted. The map was still torn. And then the technology improved again. In 2021, a large-scale genomic study was published. It appeared in the journal Science. This was not a small study. It was massive. It analyzed the ancient and modern DNA of hundreds of indigenous individuals across the Americas. It included representatives from Southwest populations. It included the Navajo. The researchers were from Harvard's Department of Human Evolutionary Biology. They were from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. These are some of the most prestigious institutions in the world. They did not use the narrow snapshots of the past. They did not just look at mitochondrial DNA. They did not just look at the Y chromosome. They used whole genome sequencing. This means they read the full unabridged genetic text. They looked at everything. The results were comprehensive, and they were, in several important ways, deeply strange. The researchers confirmed what the earlier studies had suggested. The Navajo genomes carried evidence of multiple distinct ancestry streams. These streams could not be attributed to a single migration event. They found signals of ancient admixture. These were genetic echoes of populations that had moved through the Americas in deep prehistory. The patterns did not map neatly onto any existing migration model, but what made this study different was not what it found in the Navajo genome alone. It was what it found when it compared the Navajo to others. It was the connection that no one saw coming. The twist was genuine. The ancient genetic signal found in some Navajo individuals matched partially with a population signature from far away. It matched a signature identified in samples from the Amazon basin. Think about the distance. The southwest United States and the Amazon basin are thousands of miles apart. They are different environments. One is high desert and red rock. The other is dense rainforest and river systems. They have different cultures. They have different linguistic families entirely. There was no known historical contact between these groups that could explain this link, yet the DNA said they were connected. This Amazonian signature had already puzzled researchers. It appeared in South American samples first. It was tentatively linked to a possible ancient migration. It suggested people with genetic affinities to Australasians or East Asians. It suggested a wave of movement that predated the founding migration of the Americas. Or perhaps it ran alongside it. It left its mark in scattered, isolated pockets across the continent. Finding traces of it in the Southwest was not impossible theoretically. But it was not predicted. It did not simplify anything. It complicated everything. What this suggested was profound. Researchers were careful. They spoke in the language of probability. They did not speak in certainties. But the implication was clear. The founding population of the Americas was more genetically diverse than the dominant model assumed. The people who crossed Beringia were not a homogeneous group. They were not a single tribe moving as one. They were a mix. They were a collection of peoples. The ancestors of the Navajo carried somewhere in their deep history a thread of ancestry from a migration event so ancient it left only the faintest mark. It was a ghost lineage. It was a whisper in the code. The story did not get simpler. It got older. It got larger. We are halfway through this discovery and the ground is shifting under us. If you are feeling that shift, if you are feeling the weight of this new history, please take a moment to subscribe. Join this community of seekers. Turn on notifications so you are here when we uncover the next layer of truth. Your support keeps this deep dive alive. Imagine standing in the Chuska Mountains. This is on the eastern edge of the Navajo Nation. It is a clear November morning. The elevation is above 9,000 feet. The air is cold and dry. It carries the scent of pine. Below you, the red rock country of the Colorado Plateau spreads in every direction. It is impossibly wide. It is impossibly old. The Navajo have a word for this feeling. The word is Hózhó. It is usually translated as harmony. Sometimes it is translated as balance. Sometimes it is translated as beauty. But the translation is imprecise. The word contains all three simultaneously. It describes a state in which all things are in right relationship. It describes the world as it should be. It is a concept that governs life. It governs health. It governs spirituality. I kept thinking about that word while reading the genetic studies. The researchers were trying to find order in the data. They were looking for a clean tree. They were looking for a linear descent. They wanted a story with a beginning and a middle and a legible end. They wanted Hózhó in the numbers, but the data kept resisting. It did not resist because the data was wrong. It resisted because the human story is not a tree. It is a web. It is a tangle. It is a system in which people moved and merged and separated and moved again. This happened over tens of thousands of years. They left traces in each other's genomes the way rivers leave traces in rock. You cannot look at a riverbed and say exactly when the water flowed. You can only know that it did. The scientists were looking for simplicity. The data kept offering them something more honest. It offered complexity without resolution. It offered a mystery that refused to be solved. This matters. It matters for reasons that extend well beyond the Navajo. It matters beyond the history of the Americas. It matters beyond the science of ancient DNA. We have a deep need to make human history legible. This need is understandable. It is perhaps inevitable. We want to say this people came from there. We want to say these people are related to those people. We want the lines of descent to run thus. We want the map to be knowable. We want to be able to point and say, this is who we are. But what genomic science has revealed with increasing clarity over the past 2 decades is that this need for legibility was always partly a fiction. It was not a harmful fiction necessarily. It was a simplification. It served our need for narrative. It served our need for textbooks. But it did not serve the truth. The truth is messy. The truth is layered. The truth is often contradictory. The Navajo are not simply southern Athabascans. They are not simply the product of a 700-year-old migration from Canada. They carry in their genomes evidence of movements and minglings that reach back to the earliest human occupation of the Americas. They carry evidence of migration events that predated written history by tens of thousands of years. They carry the stories of people whose names we will never know. We can only read their stories now in the language of nucleotides. We can only read them in the sequence of bases. Every human population is a palimpsest. This is a document written and erased and written again. Each layer leaves traces under the surface of the current text. You can scrape the parchment, but the old ink remains. The Navajo are not unusual in this. They are simply one of the populations whose layers we have begun very slowly to read. For a long time, science treated indigenous populations as static. They were seen as relics of the past. They were seen as pure lines that needed to be preserved and studied. This view was disrespectful. It was also wrong. Populations are never static. They are always moving. They are always changing. They are always interacting. The Navajo history shows this dynamism. It shows adaptation. It shows resilience. It shows the capacity to absorb the new without losing the core. The genetic evidence does not diminish their identity. It expands it. It tells us that they are the survivors of a much larger journey than we imagined. They are the heirs to a genetic legacy that spans continents. It spans millennia. It spans the unknown. When we look at the Amazon connection, we have to ask ourselves what it means. How did a genetic signature travel from the rainforest to the desert? Did people move north? Did people move south? Did a third group bring it to both? We do not know yet. The science is still young. The tools are still improving. But the possibility is there. It suggests a network of human movement that was far more extensive than the coastal migration theory allows. It suggests that the Americas were populated in waves. Some waves were large, some waves were small, some waves left no trace in the artifacts, some waves left no trace in the language, but they left a mark in the blood. This mark is enduring. It is resilient. It survives conquest. It survives disease. It survives displacement. It survives time. This realization changes how we view history. It changes how we view identity. If the Navajo are not what we thought, then who else is not what we thought? If the map of the Americas is wrong, what other maps are wrong? What other stories are simplified? What other truths are hidden beneath the surface of our certainty? We live in a time when we crave answers. We want quick facts. We want headlines. We want summaries. But history does not work in summaries. It works in details. It works in nuances. It works in the gray areas between black and white. The Navajo DNA story invites us into the gray. It invites us to be comfortable with not knowing. It invites us to accept that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be honored. There is a danger in simplifying history. When we make the story too neat, we erase the struggle. We erase the complexity. We erase the humanity. The Navajo people have endured much. They have faced colonization. They have faced forced relocation. They have faced attempts to erase their culture. Through all of this, they have remained. They have kept their language. They have kept their ceremonies. They have kept their connection to the land. The genetic story adds another layer to this resilience. It shows that their survival is written in their very cells. It shows that they are the product of countless unions, countless journeys, countless survival decisions made by ancestors we will never meet. To reduce that to a single migration line is to insult the magnitude of their existence. We are approaching the end of this journey, but the implications are just beginning to settle. If this perspective shifts how you see the past, I ask you to share this video, send it to a friend, post it in a group, and let's spread this understanding. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Science and culture often speak different languages. Science speaks in data. It speaks in probabilities. Culture speaks in meaning. It speaks in stories. It speaks in values and beliefs. When these two languages collide, there can be friction. Indigenous communities have often been wary of genetic research. There is a history of exploitation. There is a history of samples being taken without consent. This trust must be earned. It must be maintained. The recent studies have tried to be more collaborative. They have tried to involve the communities. This is essential. The DNA belongs to the people. The story belongs to the people. Science is just the tool used to read it. The interpretation must be shared. The Navajo concept of Hózhó is relevant here. Science seeks truth, but truth without balance is dangerous. Truth without harmony is destructive. If the genetic findings are used to divide people, then they have failed. If they are used to claim superiority or purity, they have failed. The findings show us that there is no purity. There is only mixture. There is only connection. We are all mixed. We are all connected. The Navajo genome proves this. The Amazon connection proves this. The human story is a story of mixing. It is a story of movement. It is a story of becoming. When we understand this, we can let go of the need for rigid categories. We can let go of the need for pure lines. We can embrace the web. What does this mean for the future? It means we must be humble. It means we must accept that our knowledge is provisional. What we know today may be updated tomorrow. The map we hold now may be redrawn next year. This is not a weakness of science. It is a strength. It means we are learning. It means we are listening. The Navajo were never what we thought, but what they are is even more remarkable. They are a testament to the depth of human history. They are a testament to the complexity of survival. They are a living bridge between the ancient and the modern, between the north and the south, between the known and the unknown. Consider the silence of the desert again. Consider the wind moving through the canyons. That wind has blown for thousands of years. It has carried the voices of ancestors. It has carried the songs of ceremonies. It has carried the whispers of migration. Now it carries the data of genomes. The land holds the memory. The people hold the memory. The science is just beginning to catch up. We are standing on the edge of a new understanding. It is an understanding that requires us to let go of our certainties. It requires us to embrace the mystery. The Navajo story is not a closed book. It is an open door. It invites us to walk through. It invites us to look deeper. It invites us to see the world as a tangled, beautiful web. The ending of the story is not a conclusion. It is an invitation to look at your own history. It is an invitation to question the maps you hold. It is an invitation to recognize that you too are a palimpsest. You too carry layers of history in your blood. You too are the product of movements and minglings from the deep past. We are all Navajo in this sense. We are all complex. We are all unexpected. We are all more than the stories we tell ourselves. The DNA reveals our true ancestry. And our true ancestry is diversity. Our true ancestry is connection. Our true ancestry is mystery. So when you look at the map again, do not just look at the lines. Look at the spaces between them. Look at the shadows. Look for the traces that do not fit. That is where the truth hides. That is where the real story lives. The Navajo were never what we thought. They were always more. And in realizing that, we become more too. We expand our own understanding of what it means to be human. We expand our capacity for wonder. We expand our respect for the unknown. This is the gift of the data. This is the gift of the story. It does not give us answers. It gives us questions. And the questions are better. The questions keep us awake. The questions keep us searching. The questions keep us humble. Let the mystery enlarge you. Let the complexity ground you. Let the history breathe. The Navajo people stand on the land. They stand on the history. They stand on the DNA. They are here. They are real. They are enduring. And now we see them more clearly, not as a single line on a map, but as a vibrant, complex, living testament. This is the truth. It is messy. It is beautiful. It is enough. We do not need to simplify it to understand it. We only need to listen. We only need to look. We only need to accept that the map is not the territory. The territory is vast. The territory is deep. The territory is alive. And the Navajo are its keepers. The science will continue. The sequencing will get cheaper. The samples will get older. We will find more links. We will find more surprises. The Amazon connection may be just the beginning. There may be links to Europe. There may be links to Oceania. There may be links we cannot yet imagine. The genome is a library. We have only read the first few books. The rest are still on the shelves, waiting, watching. The Navajo story teaches us to be patient. It teaches us to be respectful. It teaches us that the past is not dead. It is not gone. It is here. It is in us. It is waiting to be read. So read it carefully. Read it with humility. Read it with wonder. Because the story is not over. It is just beginning, and you are part of it.